Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Kevin Moore Show. Today, my guest is Les Jensen. Now, Les started his career in broadcast television at the ABC network affiliate KTVX. Now, this would be the beginning of a 30-year career in the broadcast industry. Now, it was when he moved to Denver, Colorado, whilst working at a local station, that Les had his spiritual awakening. Now, Les has created New Human Living as a global platform to assist humanity in discovering its own truth. Now, Les has overcome enormous obstacles in his life to get where he is today. And it was during his journey he discovered many of the reasons why humans are often having or continue to have experienced the same types of issues over and over again. Now, Les tries to bring a fresh approach to his clients and audiences and brings the realm of possibility to the front and center into your life. As Les says, life is meant to be fun, exciting, and jumping on the bed. Les Jensen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. And I think, first of all, what I want to ask you is, obviously, we're sort of, this interview was, the premise of it was based on your latest book, which is Forgiveness Sinner, God's Last Savior. Why that title?
Well, as I grew up in a very religious household. You might even think of it as an extreme religious household. And I think my soul chose that so I would question everything. And forgiven sinner, if we were to actually forgive ourselves, because we're portrayed as sinners, if we were to forgive ourselves, we would be God's last savior, our own persona. It's up to us whether we forgive ourselves or not. So the book really looks at religious dogma, religious posturing, religious. And in hindsight, don't name your book Forgiven Sinner, God's Last Savior unless it's about religion. And it's really a spiritual book. It's not a religious book at all.
Right, absolutely. So did you move away from religion to get into sort of the idea of spirituality with a bit more free thinking in a sense?
Certainly. There's a notion in the Vedic teachings that talk about, I think the term is fana. And the idea behind this is to abandon all religions because ultimately what you're looking for is at the core of your being. And so as close as I get to a religious experience is that first cup of coffee in the morning.
Right, yes. Well, that first coffee is important, as long as it's in balance and we're not drinking too much coffee all the time, which I'm guilty of as well. So what religion did you grow up in then?
Well, I was born in a Mormon household in a small town in Utah in the 60s, which meant it was like 99% Mormon. And it's like a Twilight episode. I mean, it's like a Twilight. You could go talk to the postman, the policeman, the butcher at the store, and they'd all give you the exact same answer. And it's like, whoa, is anybody here? I mean, are you all clones of each other? And right around 18, as soon as I got out of high school, I went and challenged everything they said to an extent. I turned all the knobs, I pulled all the levers that were taboo to find out, what the hell? I mean, something's got to give. But I didn't really enter my spiritual journey until I was 35.
And what was that sort of, that thing that sort of changed you into thinking differently in a sense?
The cosmic 2x4. It was like a bug hitting the windshield. My life changed in a flash, in a moment. My life was going downhill. I ended up on a shrink's couch for a couple of years. I'd been a broadcast TV engineer, and had you asked me before that episode, who are you? What do you do? And I'm like, I'm a dad, I'm a guy, I work in TV. And in that moment, we had worked together with a psychiatrist for a couple of years. And he's like, come on, let's talk about anger. I'm like, anger? This is pointless. He put out his hand. He said, push on my hand. I want to see your anger. And I pushed, thinking it was quite lame. And he kind of got up in my face and he said, look, you're safe here. You're safe. I'm safe. It's okay. It's okay for you to show anger here. Now, come on, show me your anger. And Kevin, in that moment, this valve opened up in my psyche and a huge amount of energy comes pouring out of my psyche. And I'm like, what is this? Where is this energy coming from? And how did I not know about it? And in that moment, that changed my life really forever. And now I have a radio show. I'm an author. I'm a spiritual teacher. That never would have happened without that episode.
And okay, so what happened in that room then? So when you say you sort of opened, what you got past the idea of you were the reasons for the anger, or it wasn't anyone else's issues, it was only yours?
In the initial moments, I couldn't connect any dots. It was quite a startling event. Like you're laying in a stream and you feel the water rushing over your body. It's kind of like that, but it's all etherical. This anger energy, and a lot of it comes pouring out of my psyche. I remember while it's coming out of me, I'm like, well, what are you? And the anger's like, I don't care. It was really impersonal. The anger did not care how I experienced it. And after several years of introspection, I realized that karma is impersonal. Karma, emotions, all those things are impersonal. And it's our mind, it's our human habitual tendencies that associate a consistent reaction. But the energy, the emotions, the karma itself, it's just as impersonal as gravity is. It doesn't care how you experience it.
Okay, so what was that sort of like, an understanding that you wasn't the anger, you wasn't the ego, you wasn't any of the things that you thought you were? There was something much deeper behind all this that was the true nature of what you may be?
Well, yes, but it took years of introspection. The event got my engineering mind to look inside and said, what the hell? It took some years of introspection, but in hindsight, what was going on, what was happening? Well, my ego was scared to death. My ego was very afraid of the feeling of anger. And so my ego would do anything to avoid anger. And I didn't know this. This was all subconscious. And the angel in my life was a mean, malicious angel. He was my boss for 10 years. And I go into work and he'd belittle me and get under my skin. And my anger would get stirred up and I'd go home and just, one of the signs that I wish I could have recognized is when I got home from work, I want to plop my ass on the couch and just channel surf for about an hour. And in hindsight, I realized that my internal anger was agitated and I wanted it to settle back down, if that makes sense.
Absolutely it does. But his anger towards you, his belittling, his bullying behavior, you had chosen to put yourself in that job.
Well, my soul chose for me to incarnate into a family dynamic. See, my dad was a World War II vet. He was a very big man, and if he got mad, the whole household would try to become invisible. And I'm the last of 7 kids. And I noticed the look on my mom's face when I saw anger coming out of my dad. She was scared. So as a very young child, maybe even at the womb, I don't know, I learned that nobody in the household shows anger because we might set dad off. And so my brother breaks my favorite toy, And I get sad, but I don't get mad because I can't show anger because I might trigger the family dynamic. Well, fast forward 3 decades, every event has built up in my psyche, and that's where all that energy came from.
Understood. And as an adult, though, and as at the time when that was taking place with your boss, and it was bringing up all those past feelings, when you look back now, can you say to yourself, well, actually, yes, he may have been all these things, and that triggered these issues off in myself, but actually, the issue is not with him, it's with me. I could have
Right.
taken myself out of that place and
I understand.
not wanted to experience that and not have the sort of blame there towards the other. Because when I've recently looked at my life, I'm like, with everything that's broken down in my life recently, I'm like, I'm blaming everyone else. And really, yeah, most people would do without looking at it from a different perspective. But what if I took responsibility for the whole thing, and even to the
Right.
actual initial choice of putting myself in those situations?
Right. Well, a couple of things there. The unresolved energy in me, the unresolved anger energy in me was like a beacon to the law of attraction. And I attracted to me an angry boss. And he liked the scenario because he had issues with anger. And the way he dealt with anger was control. And since he was the boss figure, he tried to squish me like a bug every single day. Now, what's important is while I was going through it, I had no sense of this. My anger was attracting his anger. It didn't ding in my bell. He was just a mean asshole to when I was going through it. But in hindsight, so I release that anger in the first episode, and then I go back in and I release a whole bunch more. I kind of fell off his radar. He wanted to have anger interaction with people, but he didn't ever get to the point of looking at himself for it. He just kept pushing the only thing he knew how to do. With emotions, the survival tactics that people can come up with are as diverse as humanity itself. And in that situation, it was perfect for me because he was such a diligent, malicious man for a decade. And that's what put me on the couch. If I look at it as a soul contract, he's one of the biggest soul contracts I've had in my life. He changed my life forever. And I thank him. I thank him now. He was so diligent at being malicious towards me that I was starting to get ulcers. I had digestive tract problems. And until I connected with and released that, it never would have happened. If he hadn't kept me pinned down, I was going downhill. I'm pretty sure I would have developed a serious disease or perhaps even have died by now.
Or any addiction issues, do you know what I mean?
Sure.
It would have only have amplified them if they had come out in the end, or
Yeah.
were there in a small dose maybe. So
Yeah.
let's reverse this rule then. And also, when did you leave that job, leave that boss? When did that disappear, that energy?
About 2 years after that.
So there was still a process. Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's the lesson had been learned, and it's kind of funny because my self-respect showed up because anger was a trump card. I mean, so imagine your decision-making process before it even gets into your conscious mind. It runs through some subconscious filters. So there's a choice. Hey, let's go do this. And if there's a possibility, doesn't matter if it's rational or not, if there's a possibility that I might get angry, the answer is no. So the ex-wife wants to I'm making this up, paint the kitchen fluorescent pink. I wouldn't argue because it might lead to anger. So I was walked on all over my life. And once I popped the pressure off and released it and kind of released the energetic connection with these karmic teachers, then I'm like, wait a minute, time out. I'm not going to get walked on. It's like there's quite a few benefits from learning that lesson, if that makes sense.
It does. And let's go to the ex-wife. Why not, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
we're painting the room pink, and you would say though, wouldn't you? And you have said before, maybe, that don't leave. Don't leave in the midst of all that arguments, all the aggro, all the negativity, because you're learning something from that. Now, is that wrong? What I'm saying?
Oh, well, if I understand you correctly, so I could use my ex-wife. I'm going to use my boss. So he's being a prick to me every day. And I say, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to go get another job. I would only find another teacher. I would go find another teacher because I hadn't resolved the conflict within my own persona. My ego was scared to death of anger. The first time in that first episode, my ego's like, oh, whoa, time out, what's going on? And and then I go back and I look for it. And now when I feel anger swell up, it's a message to me saying I'm either not respecting myself, and it's always about me. If somebody triggers me and I have an emotional reaction, it's never about the trigger. I can't have an emotional reaction unless I've got a unresolved component of emotion in my psyche, and the trigger comes and upsets it, and then my ego says, stop. And by saying stop, I perpetuate it.
And trucking in a sideward question here, and for those that may have watched my show for the first time, the ego for you, your understanding of the ego very quickly is?
Um, for 99% of humanity, their sense of self, their thinking capacity, their how they see themselves. You could think of a superconscious, your conscious, and your subconscious. All the thoughts you have in your brain is your ego thinking, typically.
I sometimes think of the ego as this personification that we are now, without
Sure.
remembering that actually we're more than this body. The consciousness is separate from the body. So anything that we're arguing with or anger with or whatever the emotion is, that's the ego side, the untrue nature of who we truly are, which is just probably more coming towards love and just so incredibly expansive, minus this
Right.
astronaut suit in a sense.
Yeah, or an avatar. The years, the day we were all born, none of us had an ego. The day we were born, we didn't have an ego. We didn't have a bias or a posturing. We didn't have any symbols. We didn't have any meanings to the symbols. And a real important thing I suggest, maybe a better way to say it is a really powerful thing to do, is look at your family dynamic, your family of origin, because your mom and dad taught you how to think. So they taught you symbols, and then they assigned values to those symbols. And that created the base or root structure of your ego. A lot of times when people get married or in a serious relationship, sometimes they clash because of the value systems are different from their family of origin. You know, if it's real important to, like in my family of dynamic, it's important that we look righteous, like we're good religious personas. So keep my hair short, don't say any swear words, be kind to other people, and that's real important. And if you were raised on a family, being reliable, being diligent, did you milk the cows this morning? And that's important. In so if you had a lineage of military service, honor, respect, duty, those are important. Well, all these things are completely different. So in the big scheme of things, what are you bringing with you from your family of origin? And you hold these like golden jewels of your sense of self. and then you bump into reality, and here comes the here comes the emotional reaction as your values are challenged. If
Y-
that makes
Oh,
sense.
absolutely, it does. And you say your emotions, you say sort of stay in the feeling, don't ignore them, don't suppress them. When an emotion's coming up, say it's an argument between two people, whatever that relationship is, right?
Sure.
You need to see through that emotion and you go from there.
Well, if you were to look on your phone and you had text messages from 3 months ago, well, they wouldn't mean much to you. Pick up eggs on the way home or whatever, because the message was meant for the moment. And so when you have an emotional, um, either initial feeling or an emotional reaction, the emotion itself is just a messenger. And the way you don't accumulate karma with your emotions is you don't suppress them. And so when the emotion comes up, you feel, okay, I feel shameful. I feel shame. Now, what is shame? Shame is self-judgment. I'm judging myself here. And then release the emotion, and energetically, you're right where you were before the emotion came up. But if the shame comes up and you say, I don't like that feeling, and you push it down, you've incremented the amount of shame energy in your psyche. So for decades, I sat there and incremented anger, and I'm walking around with like a super high pressure tank of anger, and my ego was scared to death of it.
Okay, so if you were to apply what you're saying there to even marriages, right, for example,
Sure.
um, it's difficult, isn't it? Because every marriage has ups and downs, good and bad, great days and bad days, right? But there's always
Yeah.
those arguments, do you know what I mean? And
Yes.
how, okay, so when you are going through that process, it's almost like you're saying, when you anchor those emotions and don't exactly react to them, right? But you're just sort of processing them. You're almost kind of bringing yourself a little bit more into present moment and not, kind of everything's okay right now, no matter what's going on with this argument. You know, you're processing that emotion and you are almost like I said at the beginning of this, sort of taking responsibility for why you are feeling this way to what that person's saying or expressing to you,
Sure.
right? So
Yes.
yes, that would probably dissolve the issue a little bit, but you're not
A
always
little
going to
bit.
agree. I mean, if you don't agree
Sure.
with the person, I mean, you've got to express that, but then that may create more of an argument. But then you'd go more into that space of just allowing yourself to feel the anger that you're being whatever screamed at or whatever it may be, right? So you're kind of
Right.
putting yourself back into that more that humble place, I suppose, right? But how much do you take?
Well, everybody has their own ability or inability to deal. Now, I love this conversation. So you're in a relationship, and let's say it's getting serious or is serious, and you and your spouse have this tit tat thing with a particular emotion, and in order to get through it and get past it and release it out of your relationship, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Chances are very good you attracted that spouse because you have a considerable amount of it in your own psyche, and so do they. Also, the way you handle a reaction when you get triggered, that emotion gets triggered, you have a method, a modality to handle it, and they do too. So, a few things I would say off the top is if someone triggers you, your reaction is your own stuff. You can't project. Well, you can. I want to pound my head on the wall when I hear young couples saying, "Well, he makes me so happy. He makes me so happy," and I'm like, if if you're putting your happiness on his shoulders, he's screwed because there's no way you can sustain happiness if you got a bunch of junk in the trunk, and yet he's the guy responsible for your happiness, boo hoo. I mean, things are things are going to be tough. But let's go back to that relationship thing. So a trigger happens, and in the past it's been a bantering perhaps, and you used your modalities to deal with it. Maybe it's conceding, maybe it's getting unpleasant to be around, and that'd be a control mechanism, or maybe they have those tendencies, right? Now it you can make the most traction if both people recognize that any emotion you have in your persona ever came from within you. Nobody made you feel anything ever, 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 ever. And so the trigger mechanism might be something that they did, but your reaction to it is all on you. So when that emotion comes up, the tendency there's a split second where you have a choice. And when you're not mindful, the tendency is to drop into that responsive mechanism, and that perpetuates the pattern. But in that half second, you can stay in and feel it. And most of the time, we don't like the feeling. Here comes the feeling, and it's like dread. You just feel horrible in this feeling, and you want it to stop. But just stay in that dread and say, well, this doesn't feel very good. This doesn't feel very good. Allow yourself to start feeling comfortable, feeling uncomfortable. You're not, when that feeling comes up and that dread comes up, don't drop into pattern or habit and just feel it and go, God, this feels like yuck. This feels like this is putrid. This doesn't feel good at all. And by staying in that feeling, you're literally creating a conduit that allows it to flow out of your psyche. Your old pattern would keep incrementing it because you wouldn't allow yourself to feel it. But when you stay in it and allow something to release, you start dissipating it. And then the next time you get triggered, it's not such a startled reaction thing. It's like, oh, there it is again. What is it about that? And if both sides can do that, you can really make a lot of traction by allowing yourself to just dump it out. Now, if both of you are still stuck in the reactive pattern and you start dumping out emotion, they're going to shit their pants because they don't want to feel it. It's that drudgery. Can we just stop this? I've had enough, right? But if you can just allow the space to let it pour out of you, you can really make some progress in a short period of time. And then after a while, you recognize, hey, we're doing that thing again.
Well,
right?
Yeah, I mean, you've both got to be willing to come from the space you're talking about. And if one is not so willing to go down that road,
Right.
it ain't going to work.
Well, you can only decide for yourself. When you catch the pattern and you quit reacting, it's going to put it on them because they're, let me be more articulate with that sentence. That's going to highlight or showcase that their feeling is their own. When you stop reacting in the repetitive old way, when you stop doing that, their reaction behavior will be in and of itself. There's nothing to bounce off of. And it can become more conscious for them, but that doesn't mean they'll see it. That doesn't mean they're going to react the way you might prefer, but you can only do you. And there might be a situation where they don't want to let go of it. They don't want to face it. And maybe that's time to move on or whatnot.
No, it might be their protection blanket. It might be,
sure.
Yeah.
But, in their family dynamic, it might be like if there's some hardcore emotions on this planet. I mean, dad comes home drunk and beats the shit out of mom. I mean, you can really get some extremely sensitive feelings imprinted as at a very young age and never ever ever go back to look at them until you're in a relationship and you get mad. You're not anywhere near wanting to beat on anybody, but it still triggers them. They don't they don't always have the wherewithal to discern that. I mean, it's easy for me to talk about this now, but that was 25 years ago, and I've really honed myself over those 25 years. I still have junk in my trunk. I am by no means some kind of a exalted being or whatever, but to understand the mechanics of it can really make a difference.
Yeah, yeah. And where does karma fit into this then? Because if these issues that you're talking about are from childhood, obviously, I'm guessing there's karma from what you may term as previous lives.
Sure. You don't incarnate into a household where mom beats the shit out of dad in your first incarnation. I mean, that kind of fuckosis only shows up after you've really loaded yourself up and you feel powerless. I mean, the feeling we're divine beings. The truth of us, we're magicians, we're alchemists. How can we even have an incarnation of feeling powerless unless we suppress all that? And that takes many, many lifetimes to load it up to the point where we feel very vulnerable. And now we feel powerless because if anything gets going, we're going to drown. And that's all karma. And when you dissipate that, your enlightenment, your divinity has always been at the core of you. But we load ourselves up to have these feelings of powerlessness, of hopelessness. And there's a whole collage of karmic imprinting. I hope this is making sense.
Yes. So when you're maybe choosing to experience this type of reality, I'm a soul, I want to have a go at the earth experience, then we sort of get disconnected from the, as you may say, this immense power that the soul truly is, right?
Yes.
To come into this experience. And that's, you're saying, is where the karma builds up from that disconnection of that immense power. Yes.
Over many lifetimes. And you're not going to, go ahead. You're not going to release it in a single lifetime. Typically, I try to be very careful when I make these absolute statements. It's extremely rare people transcend. I mean, especially if they've loaded themselves up to have feelings of powerlessness, to dissipate that karma in a single lifetime. But I tell you what, you become cognitive of what the karma is, and then you become conscious about letting go. You can make a lot of progress in a single lifetime.
Is one way to release that karma, is it through just meditation to quiet the mind?
If karma had a single personality or trait or attribute, that might work. But we've had meditation on the planet for, 100,000 years or more, and we're still blowing each other up. We've done yoga for 100,000 years. We've done religion. These things are tools, but wet cleanup aisle 5, Earth still has a lot of problems. So yes, they're tools. Yes, they're powerful tools, and I don't want to diminish them. But karma has many faces, you might say. It's what I like to do. I wrote a book, Personal Power Fundamentals, that talks about me posturing with that anger. And once I released that anger, my power went up because I couldn't be manipulated by anger. And I started learning about belief systems, the mental arena of karma and attitudes. And there's many facets of anger. There's many facets of karma. And when you really start to get mindful about watching yourself and purifying yourself, I think you'll be quite surprised at how many layers there are on the onion.
Yeah, and we may be able to sort of self-diagnose that karma as well, but that takes a willingness to want to look at our issues, right?
Sure. And all the books I write and whatnot is to lay a mental groundwork, kind of a framework of understanding what's going on. So when you engage these karmic reactions, you have a deeper understanding, and you don't take it so personally. Gravity doesn't give a rat's ass if you fall down the stairs and break your neck. And gravity doesn't care if you spend the day skiing on a mountain slope having the time of your life. The gravity itself is impersonal. Well, karma is attributes, personality traits of being human. And those attributes, those karmic propensities or attributes, are as impersonal as the 7 billion people on the planet. So you can change your karma in a heartbeat. Oh, there's anger. I'm going to decide now I'm not afraid of it. I know it's scary, but I'm going to just stay with it. You can change your experience of karma in a very short period of time.
Yeah, and it's okay to have experience the larger range, a range of different emotions, right? Anger being one of them.
Sure.
But really, how much of service is it really sometimes? Not that it's not that serving, is it sometimes?
Well, your karma changes. Let me be more articulate. Let's talk about emotions. So when I avoided anger, I was pouring concrete on my anger. It wasn't going to go anywhere. And then once I realized anger is a very important message for me, some spiritual teachers say you should never feel angry. BS. The emotion itself has wisdom. The brain shouldn't decide the emotion's wisdom. But once I released that, um, I became more emotionally agile, more emotionally free. And so, like, you look at society and there's all kinds of emotional upheaval. This year has been fantastic to trigger people about all their subconscious crap. And it's percolating to the surface, and you can just see on social media some people want to run down the street with their hair on fire. And it's really a deep cleanse for the collective and for individuals. So, but what I'm getting at is, as you start dealing with your karma, you become free. I don't blame anybody for how I feel. That's my stuff. When I go out and I see somebody angry, I can be compassionate towards them. I know how that can be. I don't judge or decide that what they're doing is right or wrong. It's there's a real deep sense of freedom.
Huh. Yeah, you think of like a situation that may never happen to any of us, hopefully, but you're being attacked, right? And you've got to defend yourself. It's either you or them, basically. I'm not going
Sure.
to sort of, if that guy's coming to me with a knife, I'm gonna just say, hey, yeah, sure, just just there, or just just miss the heart. You know what I mean? Um,
Right.
Anger's going to build up, rage and everything else, and I'm going to want to, stop that person and hurt that person probably to stop them.
Well, the like part of that, what you're talking about is fear, and some fear is biological. You're the gazelle out on the savannah, and here comes the leopard or to have you for lunch, and your adrenal system just dumps adrenaline in your body, and that's when you get the hell out of there. So when you feel this immense rise because you're under threat, a lot of times the what's happening is a biological response. It's literally a biological response of your body wanting to protect itself, as well as your ego going, holy, how do I navigate this fuckosis and come out the other side in one piece? So anger, I can I can feel an immense amount of anger and not flinch. And so if somebody's not respecting my space and they're being repetitively disrespectful, I can bring up anger and toss it out like that, and then go right back to what I was doing and not have an extended recovery period, if you will. That's a good point to mention is how long do you get upset? So you go into work and your boss is feeling crappy. Normally he's a nice guy, but he's feeling crappy and he dumps on you. And it clobbers you and you go home. Are you upset for an hour, a day, 2 days, a week? That's not a very healthy scale, because the emotional message of the moment was meant for just that moment. So that's a good measuring stick to see if you're actually processing your emotions in a healthy way.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And you've mentioned this before as well, and I thought it was interesting. Well, first of all, just how important human beings are at this time, right? They're playing an important role, and really also reversing that as well is that we came here for this experience, didn't we? I don't think we came here to be awakened fully. We're not going to know. We're not. How are we ever going to know what the true nature of this consciousness really is? I mean, no one's ever come back, have they? Yes, a lot of the messages through the different authors and teachers and masters out there, they all kind of say the same kind of things sometimes, love being one of the biggest things. But, we did choose this, is my point.
Sure. Well, a calm sea does not make a skilled sailor. If you're incarnate on planet Earth at this time, you're taking the most advanced class perhaps in the galaxy. Look at what humanity has done on this planet. We've built out a nuclear arsenal to vaporize all life on the planet. We've had endless wars. We have human trafficking. We have child trafficking. We have exploitation of the masses. I could go on and on and on. This is a karmic shitstorm. This is a karmic tsunami. And from that perspective, the vast majority of humanity is not cognizant of how powerful this lesson is. If you can discover love, more specifically unconditional love, in your psyche and then embody it in this tsunami, in this karmic tsunami, you are, I promise you, angels will sing your name in glory. This is a very, very challenging place to incarnate. And if you're having a tough time, I understand.
Well, there's lots of tough times right now, and just around the corner from the taping of this interview, probably financially as well. Do you know what I mean? For a lot of people,
sure.
And many different reasons with the COVID currently taking place. So I think what you're saying is that love equal to sort of letting the high consciousness through sometimes? And when we do let that high consciousness through, our soul through, an aspect of our soul shine through, we can approach problems in different ways and, be an example to others, maybe just what's possible.
Oh, certainly. Absolutely. Some things to consider. Your soul, if we look at your soul as as unconditional love, your soul has no comprehension of fear. Your soul has no comprehension of limitations. But those are things we can embody with our ego and our emotions and our karmic posturing. So your soul is not going to meet you where you're at per se. Your soul's not going to take on fear and take on limitations to come down and deal with your ego. It's quite vice versa. To embody your soul, since your soul doesn't have these karmic posturings, as you purify your persona, the tagline in New Human Living is pure, authentic you. And I chose those two words, purity and authenticity, for a very specific reason. As you purify your energy persona, you're moving into the frequency of your soul, and now your soul can descend into your body, and then you can embody your soul. Does that make sense?
Yes. And what would the world look like if that took place on a sort of more day to
It'd
day
be,
experience?
compared to this planet, it'd be really boring.
Yeah, right.
Imagine everybody as Jesus is. Let me get the door for you. No, let me get the door for you. Here's, uh, um, if you think of non-local space or non-duality, and you've only taken one step into duality, there's nothing to resolve. There's no challenges. There's no. It's a calm sea, right? And so our souls chose to go into this darkness, to go into this karmic forgetting, this karmic drudgery, really, the darkness itself. We chose to come so far away from the light that we don't even know if it exists or not. Now in this darkness, we can see a single ray of light and go, wow, look at that. I mean, to make the journey back from darkness to light is to totally, completely, and totally understand what it means to be a human being in the fullest range of karmic propensities possible.
Yeah.
You you get that down, you're master Jedi. That's the stuff. And that's your soul chose to come here to work on that, to do that.
So, what is the point really of this message that we're giving to these people right now that are watching this, or the person that's watching this?
Well, you're a timeless soul. The continuity of your consciousness is assured. In other words, no matter what choice your ego makes, you can't bugger it up. You can't do it. Even if you make a bad choice and you die, you have a continuity of your soul. Now, your ego didn't exist the day you were born, but your soul did. So the permanence of you is absolute. There's no getting rid of you. It can't happen. No choice in the human arena can threaten the truth of you. You are safe. You are safe. You are safe. And now to look at what karmic propensities you have, what tendencies you have, and then the tendencies of the collective consciousness, well, then you get a good idea of what lessons you've come here to learn. And when you can become conscious of what those lessons are, and then using tools, learn to master those lessons, you're literally transforming the state of human consciousness on a planet. How flippin' cool is that?
Yeah. For what result, though, do you think in the end? I mean, what are.
Love has no motivation. Consciousness always seeks a new expression, and there's no end to the story. Look at the stars in the sky at night. This is a never-ending story. As a soul, you can come out of light and go into darkness and come back up to light, but that cycle will repeat. It's the very nature of nature. Everything in nature is cyclic.
Interesting. Yeah. It's a big one, isn't it, for some people that, okay, so yes, we can self improve with some of these ideas, but, will it. What I suppose the only thing that's going to look different is if you're doing inner transformation, then there's going to be some outer transformation, isn't there? I suppose. So,
Without question,
yeah,
there's no other outcome.
yeah. And without trying to change the world, right? It's about changing yourself.
Sure.
That's it, really.
There's no single persona that can come down and wave a magic wand and turn everything on its head. But keep in mind, the feeling of heaven, the feeling of joy, the feeling of just exquisite joy. What about a homeless mother that has been raising her kids sleeping in a car at night because she doesn't have a place? And then she gets back up on her feet and she gets an apartment. And for the first time, she walks in her own apartment and she closes the door and locks it and has a sense of security for the first time. Well, what that feeling? Oh my God. Oh my God. That is that the there's so many opportunities to feel just exquisite joy as we increment out of the darkness. And I think it's a beautiful design. It really is.
Even if that neighborhood is full of drug people and prostitutes, and maybe the apartment's roach infested, right? Um, it's difficult. I'm sure the gratefulness is there, but there's always something to challenge you, even in those times. In that example,
Well, yes. The more power you surrender, the more vulnerable you've become. But there's also the flip side of it. Let's take a look at like saviors like Krishna or Buddha or Jesus. They can manifest out of thin air. You know, it's where's the challenge to them? That they were anchored in their truth. You couldn't sway them. They knew the truth of who they were. And so everything that happened to them was impersonal. Even on the cross, he says, hey, forgive these folks, you know. So whether we take it personally or not, we can evolve out of that. And that gives us a much deeper sense of resilience. And with that resilience comes a deeper sense of empowerment.
do you think though sometimes that some of these teachers that even especially in religion, we sort of idolize um, certain faiths, right? Certain masters, right?
Sure,
Or
sure.
whatever they may be, and we don't want to achieve really what they've achieved. We sort of in that worshiping mode. We think we do, but maybe we don't think we're worthy enough to get to that space. And also on top of that, I think even in spirituality as well, in some of the people that are big name figures out there, we 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 see them, we think we maybe could have it all. Some of us think we're not able to achieve it, but we want to emulate them the way they are, and that's not authentic. You got to find your own path. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of what I'm
Sure.
saying.
Yes. Now, they were examples. Jesus said, you're going to do everything I've done and more. But it's not that we're supposed to copy him verbatim. It's authenticity, the pure authentic you. Authenticity it's a beautiful thing. When I'm authentic to myself, I will not fatigue over time. I will not fatigue being my authentic self. And so when I'm pure, I can embody my soul, I can embody unconditional love. When I'm authentic, I don't posture with anything. And karma is the posturing. It's where we're suppressing our authenticness for what we think other people want us to be. And now I've got some bias, and over time, I'm going to be resentful. But if I stay authentic, and if once you come home to your authenticity and you wear it, and that's the only thing you are, that's how people understand you to be. And so you don't have to posture anymore in your life. But many people, their idea of authenticity is what their ego wants. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about heart and soul authenticity, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, it's you could reverse that into business and say, well, that's a great business. I'll just, emulate what they're doing. But
Yeah.
they're already there, and if you're not going to do something different, it's just again, it's not authentic.
Yeah.
It's not original, and most times it doesn't work. Um,
So it's not sustainable.
it's not sustainable.
Authentic.
Yeah,
So when you're authentic, like writing, people read prominent people's books and they'll go to write and they'll want to copy them. Well, that's not from the heart. That's not the passion of your soul. You know, sure, you learn something there, but set all that aside and tune in and say, what is the message I want to convey now? And now your words are authentic. Now your words come from your heart, and the reader will be touched in their heart because you spoke from your heart. Authenticity. It's the stuff. It's a great place to live your life.
yeah, it is, and I think especially now as well, with so much struggle out there, then people could watch this and say, well, um, is this my reality for a long time right now? Do I have to just struggle? Did I come here just to struggle?
You can be happy today. You can be happy in happiness is everywhere in every win. Happiness has no condition of its own. Sure, you can look at the dynamic of what's going on, and I don't mean to discount some of the tragedy that people are going through. Industries are collapsing, jobs are collapsing, suicides going up, domestic violence is going up. I'm not downplaying that. But if I look at this as, oh my God, I'm a soul here taking the most advanced class and what it means to be human, I'm in the most advanced class there is. What the hell? Woohoo! Now, I turn around and I face my problems, but when I look at it from my soul's perspective, it can really take a lot of the burden off. If I stay in my head and I feel like I've got to control all this crap outside of me, oh my God, that's going to get tiring. You're going to get fatigued and it'll be hard to manifest. It'll be hard to get people excited about you, if that makes sense.
No, it does, and we're going to get very quickly into manifestation, just very quickly. It does, but when that sheriff is, putting that eviction note on your door potentially,
Sure.
or
Yes.
you've had a loved one that's going through whatever, or maybe you're just in a lot of pain right now for whatever issues are going on. It's happy. It's happy is one state, yes, you'd like to be in, but
Yeah.
it's difficult to always stay in that space.
Sure. If you're going through that kind of intensity, you've really loaded yourself up over time, over lifetime. So and in this lifetime, and it can be it can be very overwhelming. It can be very hopeless. It can seem like despair, like there's no. I mean, so many businesses are closing. Where are the jobs? Where's the source of income? Yeah, I can relate to that. It's um, to understand that this is a challenging class, and sometimes when things seem futile and hopeless, that's the very edge of powerlessness. And for you to go all the way that far into darkness, you chose to make a very challenging condition for yourself. But the continuity of yourself is assured that your ego doesn't necessarily go, woohoo, I'm off the hook. But it's through the pressure, it's through the challenge of this extremely difficult time that you're going to reach deeper in yourself. You're going to reach deeper in yourself for some resolve that says, you know what? I don't need my heart, my soul can see potentials for my future where it works out okay. My heart, my soul can see a dynamic where all this gets resolved. I'm going to trust that. I'm going to quiet my mind and tune in to my inner inspiration and be inspired about the new directions. How many people have to do something completely different in their life now? What I mean is, industries have been turned on their heads, like conventions. There's zero conventions this year. If that was your bread and your butter, your industry is gone. You don't go to another convention business and apply, they're all shut down. So you have to reinvent yourself. You might be an old fart that doesn't feel like learning anything new. That's really tough.
But I think I kind of get where you're coming from this, that you did mention just there as well, the power, and it sounds so flip-floppy, but really, there's a lot in this, the power of the mind, the power to see yourself where you want to be. And it's not an instantaneous get there kind of thing, or get out of town, kind of clause, but it does seem to work, that the power of the mind is very, very powerful. And then, playing with imagination, seeing,
Sure.
feeling what you really would want to do, is it can lead to something. Maybe you've got to go through a few different paths to get there, but I think it does work. That's my point. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, sure. So before that moment when I cracked myself open, I'm a TV engineer. What will I be doing in 3 decades? I'm a TV engineer. And then bam, the cosmic 2x4. I'm a published author. I'm a radio show host. I'm a visionary. I'm a philosopher of consciousness. Who would have thunk? I love noodling the nature of nature. What is it about this human persona and my soul, and and what's the dynamic of all this? I'm very passionate about that. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life.
I think also as well is knowing that in those situations where it's that dire, that the universe somehow always seems to have our back. It does seem to work out that way, we see on the movies, intense drama, don't we? Where that, it's just painful moment after painful moment. You know what I mean? Where they get to their lowest, but actually in this version of reality, there's always someone that's there to help. There's always something that happens. It's difficult to know.
But
Go ahead.
To be able to recognize support. If you've been I'll take care of it myself, thank you very much, and that might have served you very well running your own company, and now your company's gone. And now you're like, what? The universe can bring you opportunities for support, and for you to recognize them and then lower your pride and actually allow that support in, that might be the lesson itself.
Absolutely. And I suppose everything that we've spoken about, and there's so much more to your other books as well, that obviously your current book's just been coming up on the screen, and so has your websites as well. But to everything that we've spoken about, this all comes down to the understanding that we are more than our body. But for those out there that may not feel that, how have you come to know that is... Well, it's your truth, it's your knowing, it seems to be everything your work stands for. So you've got some people watching this who do not believe in any of that, yet they may think there's some wisdom in what you have to say.
Sure. I promise you, I didn't see myself. I did not see myself this way at all. I did some past life regression, and in my family of origin and the religion behind that was blasphemy. That was unheard of. And I took the time to do that, and it really quite startled me. It kind of really startled me about, well, wait a minute. I've been many different things over many periods of time. And then as you purify yourself, if I go in a kindergarten class and I talk calculus, there's not going to be a connection. But if those kids take math and trig and geometry and algebra, and they get into pre-calc, and I say the exact same sentence, they can make that jump. Well, our soul has this vision of our life. Our soul has this understanding of the immortality of our consciousness, the eternal perpetuation of ourselves. And as you purify yourself, you get into the upper realms of yourself, and your ego can ingest the wisdom of your higher mind, if that makes sense. So I understand if you're in the trenches going through the tough stuff and some guy yaks about the eternal presence of your consciousness, you can roll your eyes and say, sure, right, I get that. I understand that. But it challenge everything I've said to you. Don't take anything just because I said it. Weigh everything that comes into your psyche, and your heart will tell you what's right for you.
Yeah. Sometimes you've just got to sit with it, haven't you? The idea that we're more than our body. I mean, it is an incredible thing. The I am, the whatever you want to call this aspect of us that's aware of our awareness. You know, I mean, it seems to me that there's something much more going on there with that awareness in the background. But even employing some of the things that you've said without the understanding that, without the need to maybe accept that we're a soul having a human experience, they are useful tools to get you to that place. Even if you just wanted to disconnect the truth that, we're more than our body, even though I would find that hard, but I'm always questioning myself, well, am I a soul? But then I think to myself, well, anyone I've spoken to in this field, what you're saying right now still leads me to become that better version of myself, regardless whether it was true or not.
And when you do that, you'll enjoy life more. When you make a better, when you develop a more authentic sense of self, when you get a deeper connection with the truth of who you are, regardless of the big picture understanding, you don't have to swim in the etherical idea of what the big picture of what's going on to have a better life. There's nothing that's required. You have fierce free agency. You can think any damn sentence you want and you can take action on it. You have fierce freedom to do anything you want.
Sometimes I feel limitations on the money that I want to generate. We all want a bit more money right now, and I feel, oh God, I'm going to have to wait to see through the manifestation of certain things for that money to be generated, right? I've got to whatever it is, product, service that I'm going to set up to do that. And then there's another part of me that's like, yeah, but even when you do set it up, oh God, you just don't know, is it going to be successful? Will it do its thing? And it's hard to sort of let go of that sometimes because you want it to do its thing, right? You just want it to move you forward and work, but it don't always turn out like that.
Certainly. If you've loaded yourself up, I'd go back to your family of origin, your mom and your dad, or whatever that dynamic looked like. What was their idea of wealth and prosperity? Did they go up and hit a glass ceiling and kind of live their whole life there? That's really common in the dynamic of the 50s and the 60s. Well, they taught you how to think. They taught you what to believe. It can take quite a bit of unraveling to undo those belief systems. Every single time it'll be done unto you as you believe. And your subconscious has as much weight as your conscious mind. How many people have done affirmations or had a vision board for 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years and they don't see a change? Well, that's your subconscious. Your subconscious kind of has a final say. And if you subconsciously don't believe you deserve it, you won't have it.
And do you know what that subconscious does? It self-sabotages you.
Sure, you bet.
You start doing self-sabotaging behavior, whether it's the people you're working with, as in deep down these people aren't the right people to work with. No judgment, but they're not going to perform, do whatever issues they've got, self-sabotage, or whatever the decisions you do is just self-sabotage all the way along. And that's probably, I can relate to that.
Well, imprinting, how many decades do people go through before they even have an inkling to look at this stuff? You know, I try to write my books to put a context to it so you can get a framework and get a quicker understanding, kind of fast forward the mechanics of it so you can at least understand why you prefer to drop into emotional reaction. You learn to understand why triggers are things you avoid like the plague, and how that avoidance keeps you stuck.
Or you are the trigger, whatever way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
There's
sure.
so many ways to look at it. Well, with everything we've spoken about, you also do courses, I believe, as well. You've written some courses on your website. Is that right?
Right now, I have a great emotions audio clip. It's an hour long, and I really delve into the mechanics of emotions. I'm working on a mental equivalent to that. Really, if you want to fast forward, Personal Power Fundamentals is an ebook that's only available at newhumanliving.com. And that's a great comprehensive hit the ground running kind of material. It talks about the mental body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, karma, um, really the mechanics of how we lose our power, personal power fundamentals, how we lose our power, and what we can do to get our power back.
Excellent. Okay. So your websites have been coming up on the screen throughout this interview, which I've really enjoyed. Just very quickly, just before we go as well, the most important message of your work again is
Take a chill pill. Take a deep breath and relax. Learn to enjoy this day. Learn, maybe it's the smell of the coffee in the morning or how the sheets feel when you climb into bed at night. If you want to enjoy your life, learn how to find joy in this day.
so important. I love that. Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to do right now as well. And sometimes it's just the small things.
Yeah,
Even as that example of the homeless woman finding her apartment, it could just be just appreciation of everything you've got right now.
right.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people on the planet that would love to be in your shoes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And some would say, well, someone's always got it worse. And I guess there's some truth in that because they've wanted to go at a much lower uh, self-destructive course because that's what they need, but they can still get out of it. That's the great part of it. So, Les, I just want to say thank you for your time right now.
Kevin, it's been a real joy. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.